Yes, people, Manscaped is back, but this time it's not for below the belt grooming. Manscaped brings to you the Beard Hedger, the best product on the market when it comes to beard trimmers. The Beard Hedger is unique due to its number of gradient settings. As someone who's purchased this, I won't turn to any other beard trimmer. Check it out for yourself at manscaped.com. And don't forget to use code FTM20 to get 20% off of this product.
Yes, people, we are back in the house. Good morning to you all. I hope you're looking forward to your weekend. The sun is shining where I am. I hope it is for you around the world. Make sure you do me a favor and hit a like on this and subscribe. And make sure you support the sponsors for the channel by clicking the pinned comment. Go into the Beard Hedger. You'll receive 20% off automatically if you use the link that is in the pinned comment. So make sure that you get yourself some beard trimmers. Somebody who has always got a slick beard is my guest today, who is one of my good mates and great friend of the show. Go back very, very long now, Harry. You know, it's mad. The other day I was thinking how long I've known you now. It's scary, but I haven't seen you enough of late. How are you, Harry Simeon?
Yeah, good. I'm definitely going to have a look at one of those beard hedgers. I've actually, no joke, right? I've been looking for a beard trimmer recently because I've gone through a phase where it's like the beard is getting out of hand too quickly. And it's like, I don't always have time to get down to the barbers, and the hair's all right, but the beard, yeah. I think I need to invest in one of those.
Listen, man, go for it. Go sort yourself out, man. It's really good. I must say, it's the best I've had. And I've been through, listen, my beard's nowhere near as long as yours. I keep it a bit short because it's got a little bit of a Ed Sheeran tinge to mine. Do you know what I'm saying? If it gets too long. But for me, yeah, the best I've had, man. So make sure you go do that. And make sure you check out people in the comment section. Harry, I feel like I need to ask you how you are, man, because I haven't seen you for so long. You're moving away. You've been to the Euros. You're busy every time I see you. You're on Talk Sport. You're absolutely moving mad, which is beautiful to see. But how are you, mate?
Yeah, I'm good, man. I'm good. It's been a bit of a busy week, which is weird because it's pre-season and you're kind of hoping that this is the time where you can sort of wind it down a little bit. But I've had a few really late nights and really early starts, and I feel like I've got to the point now at the weekend where it's caught up on me. I was at TalkSport this morning, so I left my house at 5 o'clock this morning, and I've been there, done my job, and come home. So I'm kind of, I was glad when you said Saturday morning, or when you said we can do it this time, because my wife is in the process of like clearing out loads of stuff in the house, and I know she's going to rope me in for some help. So being on here gives me an extra bit of time that I'm not being dragged into doing stuff like that.
Listen, what'll happen, bro? You'll come off here, you'll go into the bedroom, and there'll just be a pile of stuff that you are going to have to be chucking out. You have to go through it all like, oh, I definitely want to keep this, and you don't even know what it is. You're like, what is this?
It's always, and when you do something like that, when you start doing stuff like that, it always looks worse before it looks better.
Yeah, man.
And it's just like getting through that stage, and I'm like, oh, I could do without it. And obviously we got the Arsenal game, haven't we? Which is kind of late tonight, early hours tomorrow morning. So I'll be watching that as well. But I need to sneak in a nap somewhere. But I've been good, man. I've been good. Good to see you're smashing it as well, man. The channel's growing. Everything looks great. And congratulations on that.
Oh, man, I love for that. Thank you so much, man. And you're smashing it as well. It's great to see. I love getting you on because we don't always see eye to eye when it comes to things Arsenal, bro. And it's good to get different opinions. It's good to debate it out. And me and I have gone back for years and ranted about things that have gone Arsenal's way and haven't gone Arsenal's way, man. But I think on this one, for a transfer window that has been pretty quiet, I wanted to start by asking why you think that is, Harry, because it hasn't just been Arsenal that's quiet. It's been Arsenal overall. It's been the window overall. And Arsenal are no different. What do you put that down to, bro?
Two things. First one being the fact that it was a tournament summer. That doesn't help. The fact that so many of the world's best players are away on international duty makes it more difficult to do business. So that's never ideal. And it's not just the Euros. You've got the Copa America as well. So that kind of group of players are also involved in tournaments. You've got the Olympic Games as well. I know that most of the big boys don't go to the Olympic Games, but it's still a distraction for some players. And, you know, for example, we saw the Michael Olise to Bayern deal go through really early. And that was because he is involved at the Olympics, but wasn't involved at the Euros. So it's kind of, the market's been a bit mixed up because of the different timings of the events. So the first reason I'd say is that. The second reason is the PSR stuff. I said at the time when we started seeing teams get deducted points and fines being handed out, that this was the beginning of a reset that football probably needs to go through. I think what you're going to see is those, well, we already know that the rules are going to be relaxed pretty soon and the whole thing's going to change. And I think that's been done in reaction to the fact that everything has slowed down. And that's not good for business. That's not good for the Premier League. And as a result of that, I think, you're going to see that probably reverse back the other way. But at the moment, there are a lot of clubs that are walking the tightrope in terms of what they can spend, that are fearful of over-investing in players, in case those moves don't work out. So I just think, I think it's a combination of those two things that have put us in this position. I've said from an Arsenal point of view that we were always going to get to a point where the spending was going to slow down. Now, I know people don't want to hear that. I know people want to say, well, look at Arsenal. They missed out on the title a couple of seasons ago. They got closer last season, but still didn't get over the line. And so instead of slowing down, now's the time to be kind of really putting your foot on the accelerator and trying to get there. And in a lot of people's eyes, the way to do that is to spend. However, it doesn't work like that. Football doesn't work like that. And because of these rules that are in place and the structures that you need to stay within, it was always going to come a point where Arsenal had to slow it down a little bit. I still think they'll spend this summer, by the way. We know that one deal's pretty much done. I think there'll probably be two more, if I'm honest. But will they be your 60, 70 million pound plus signings like we've seen with the likes of Kai Havertz and Declan Rice more recently? I don't think so. I think Arsenal are going to be shopping in a slightly different bracket now, not because they're not ambitious, but because the plan was always to do the heavy lifting and the big change in the squad over the course of a 3-year period. And I feel like we've come out the other side of that. And now we've got the core there, and it's just about adding and tweaking and getting it right in terms of raising the floor of the squad rather than pushing the ceiling too much higher. So that's where I think we're at now.
Do you think as well, H, like I've looked at some of the rumours, not just to Arsenal, and on this channel I've been doing transfer news on all the clubs. I keep seeing this loan with an obligation, with an obligation. That's got to be PSR, ain't it? That's got to be.
100%.
There's no way that there can be people that are accepting loans of obligations, because we keep hearing this through not just Arsenal, through all the clubs now that are more than happy. They want this player, but back in the day when they could just slap 40 million down because it's the new summer and they can go again, we're seeing more of this loan of obligation. That's got to be PSR, bro, isn't it?
100%. And look, it makes sense if you think about it, because it's not that these clubs in a lot of cases can't spend any money. It's just that they need to make sure that they've only spent a certain amount of money within a particular accounting period. So if let's say you're Marseille, right? And I'll use Marseille as an example because we know that they're after Eddie Nketiah, and we know that what's been touted is a loan with an obligation to buy. Marseille have got plans to overhaul their squad completely this summer. There's talk that they're trying to change 70 to 80% of their starting 11. In order to do that, they need to be able to spend a vast amount of money. But unfortunately, their financial situation doesn't allow them to do that in one summer. So they look at Arsenal's situation, they look at Eddie Nketiah, and they think, we do want this player. We'd quite like him. But if there's a way in which we can make this money ultimately leave our bank accounts 12 months down the line, that helps us in terms of spreading the cost. And they're banking on being in the Champions League and all the rest of it and the revenues that come with that, which they can hopefully offset against a deal like that. From Arsenal's perspective, if you've got a player like Eddie Nketiah and nobody is coming in and making you an offer which is close to what you think is reasonable, then this works for you as well, because you can essentially guarantee that money is coming down the line 12 months later. So you might not get the reward for it today, but if it's an obligation to buy, you know that that's going to be on your books next season, and you can work and offset that. And I think Arsenal, have to be smart and have to be realistic about what they're going to get for some of these players. If Eddie Nketiah fetches 25 million euros, but you get that money next year, it's better than selling him for 10, 15 million now. And that's what Arsenal are looking at. Cash flow isn't really a problem. It's balancing the books. And in order to do that, there are creative ways of doing so, i.e. accepting those types of deals. So I think it's just clubs kicking the can down the road and trying to spread their costs over a longer period of time so that the books look healthier in the short term. I was going to say, I lost you there.
I was on mute there, mate. That's not you, it's me. It's interesting for you to talk about outgoings. I want to touch on that in a minute. I do want to first start with the incomings, because it does sound like Calafiori is going to be imminent. There's reports of a medical today, Harry, in London. And then he's going to fly out to the US, which is great, to join for pre-season. This is pretty much going to get done. I understand the negotiation. I did kind of give Edu and Arteta a hard time to start with, but when I actually delved into it more, you realise that there was a hell of a lot with this deal in relation to Roma, Bologna, sell-on clauses. It's been
Basel.
a bit of a mess.
Yeah,
Basel, sorry, that was the guy. Yeah, I don't know what team I said. Yeah. So for me, there's a lot of clubs, other clubs that were involved. Just from the off, man, I didn't know much about this player. I've got to be real. I'd be lying if I said to you that I watched every game of him in Serie A. Now, as someone who I know is a massive, massive fan of Serie A, and definitely Thiago Motta and Bologna made noises for the right reasons. He was one of the reasons that they got Champions League football, from what I hear, and was very impressive, although Italy weren't in the Euros. I will say that I'm quite excited by this player. And what I hear about him is he could be the perfect fit at left back, where we finally get someone who could nail down that position. Now, we've had so many left backs, if you think about it, in the Arteta reign. Like, even if you go back to, Nuno Tavares and Kieran Tierney, who were there to start with. We've had Kolasinac there under Mikel Arteta. We've never had anyone that's come in, even Zinchenko and Kivior and Tomiyasu, that you could go, boom, he's our left back. Now, Julian Timber, we thought was going to be that guy. In pre-season, he looked fantastic. Community Shield, he was man of the match. Played against Forest, looked sharp. Came in the last game of the season, looked sharp. But for the rest of it, was injured. So I wanted to ask you on both of that position and the player in Calafiori, and what that might mean for the future of Julian Timber, bro.
Well, I think when Mikel Arteta brought Alexander Zinchenko in, it was because he thought that having Zinchenko there would allow us to play through the lines from deeper, would allow us to push that extra body into midfield. We know that Arteta's idea of football is based around dominance and control. And so he wants a player that can comfortably step into midfield. Over time, I think it became a bit of a problem for us. We started to get exposed a little bit down that left-hand side, because we all know, as good a footballer as he is, Alexander Zinchenko defensively isn't the best option. He's had injury problems as well, which hasn't helped. And so Arteta started to use alternative options. He used Jakub Kivior there quite a bit last season, who isn't a left-back, in my opinion, is a centre-back who's trying to play in that position. And defensively, I think for the most part, he was okay. However, when you asked him to step into midfield and try and get involved in the build-up, he looked lost. I think you can say the same for Takahiro Tomiyasu. I don't think there are many better one-on-one defenders in world football than Takahiro Tomiyasu. It's really difficult to get past him because he's athletic, he's strong, he's powerful. Incredibly difficult to drop a ball over the top of his head because of his size and his aerial prowess. But again, when you push him into midfield, he looks lost. And there were points at the beginning of last season, the first half of last season, where we looked really unbalanced down that left-hand side. And I think it had a big knock-on effect on Gabriel Martinelli as well. And it played a part in why his form dropped off. I'm not saying it was solely down to that. He's got to do more as well. But I think that was a factor. Then the midfield balance wasn't quite right either, because we were using Havertz there, which probably should never have happened. I think he did okay in terms of contributing defensively, but Kai Havertz, you saw the way he changed when he moved into centre forward and the impact that he was having. So I think Arteta's been kind of lost in this space of, I do want my left back to venture into midfield and do things on the ball. But when I pick the right guy for that, I don't have the right guy defensively. And I don't think that, Arsenal have just gone for Calafiori based on what they saw, at the Euros. This is a guy who has impressed for the best part of 12, 18 months now with Bologna. He isn't a left back by trade per se, but Ben White wasn't a right back. I just think that Arteta looks at him and sees all the attributes he wants. He's tall, he's powerful, he's dominant defensively, but he's so confident on the ball, Dan. The way this guy will pick up the ball from defense and just carry it into midfield. You could argue that he takes too many risks at times in possession. That's certainly the opinion that a lot of people in Italy had of him, but he just looks so composed and confident. And I think he brings us both sides of the game. So my prediction is that Arsenal are going to use him as a left back. He has played there before. And, then you've got options, right? Because you can push White into midfield if you want, and he can become part of a back three. Equally, you can do it on the other side. Calafiori go in, and you can, use Ben White as a third centre back. I don't see there being any chance really of him breaking up the Gabriel Saliba pairing, but he's seen an opportunity to improve a defensive line that, in my opinion, was already to a really, really high level. And that shows you that Mikel Arteta is desperate to keep on improving. Because you could have made the case, well, Timber's back now. He doesn't need to go and spend any money in that area, and we'd still probably be fine. But no, he's seen that opportunity and he's gone out and done it. And he's one of the most exciting players that we saw at the Euros, despite Italy being poor. And I'm buzzing for this one. I can't wait for him to come in.
Yeah, listen, I agree with everything you've said in relation to the left back scenario. I do feel it's a position that's been quite frustrating. I totally agree with you on the Martinelli front. I think having Havertz in the left eight, then a different left eight, then a different left eight, a different number 9, a different left back. Martinelli's not been settled. And sometimes people will point the finger at Martinelli, and rightly so, because he's got to look at his own individual performances as well, right? But when you're surrounded by players that are playing around you that are completely different each week, I do think if we get some more sustainability around that left-hand side, I think we'll see a different Martinelli. And I think his game will be improved if we can look to those positions. It looks like it's going to happen, Harry, for £40 million, which I think is actually quite good money in relation to how good he's going to be potentially. 22 years old, very highly spoken about. Likened to Maldini and Ramos. Is that because he's got long hair, or is that going to be a bit over the top? Like, you know what I'm saying? But I can understand why people like to compare people of old to new. I've got to see him in an Arsenal shirt before I make any comparisons myself, but I'm quite excited by this one. I think on the Timber front as well, personally, he's a player that's quite versatile anyway. If you remember, we didn't actually bring Timber in to be a left back. You know, we brought him in to compete in areas anyway, and that's exactly what I think he will do. It's interesting to see at the moment he's playing at the right-sided centre-back, which I think is quite an interesting one, because I've always had that kind of question mark of if Saliba was to get a knock, who would actually come in? Would it be Ben White shifted back? Would it be Timber? Would it be Tomiyasu? And it looks to me as if he sees Timber as a centre-back as an option as well. Which
But the point is, Dan, you'd be okay with any of them doing that job.
There you go.
Which shows you how much of a well sort of built unit this is defensively. Look, people will say in the chat that, you know, we need a striker, and I'm sure we'll get onto that.
Yeah.
But we're talking about the defense right now. And I said that when Timber came in, that I felt like the defensive unit was complete then. Obviously, I didn't factor in that he was going to be missing for the entire season. But,
yeah, of course.
You know, I thought that was job done defensively. We had 2 top goalkeepers. We had 2 top centre-halves with Timber, who could cover, with White, who could cover, with Tomiyasu, who could cover. We had different options at left back, whether that be Tomiyasu, Timber, or Zinchenko, depending on the game. And now with Calafiori as well, it just looks like he's ticked every box. That defense has everything now.
It does. And I think what would be great is, you mentioned the Department of Defence being extremely impressive. We need to move that into our midfield now, Harry, because it doesn't look too impressive, in my opinion, in midfield. With the futures of Jorginho and Partey not long-term, we know they've got a year left. Declan Rice is the only one left, really. El Neni is gone, which is a good thing, in my opinion. I don't know what your thoughts are about this area. I wanted to ask you a couple of questions first, because we're linked with a few players. But what needs to happen, first of all, in my opinion, is we need to work out a few things before we work out who we bring in. What I mean by that is, what is the future of Partey? Is Jorginho the backup? Are we playing in a double pivot, or is there a 6-8-10 going on? And where the hell do you play Declan Rice? So I wanted to get your thoughts on that before we start talking about incomings.
So Partey, I know that his injury record has been incredibly frustrating, right? But I don't think any of us can sit here and say that he's not a good enough player when available.
I agree with that.
We all know that he's good enough. So the way I look at the Partey situation is take into account his age, take into account his contract situation, and take into account that he's got a really patchy injury record. Who on God's green earth is going to come in and pay big money for Thomas Partey now? Nobody, with the exception of maybe Saudis.
Yeah.
Right. That is it. That's the only option. Otherwise, you know, you're not getting anything sufficient. So if you're not getting the money in, then why not just keep him for another season and try and use him as much as possible? Bringing in different options probably means that you can give Thomas Partey the breaks that he needs in order to manage his fitness. We all know that he needs to be managed a lot more carefully than some of the others. On the Declan Rice point, for me, he's an 8 now. I think that it's clear that in the first half of last season, when Declan Rice was playing as the 6, he was good, but he wasn't, for me, he was never the ball progressor that we needed from deep. And I think over time, Mikel Arteta realized that, hence why he started to change things. Like, people keep saying he changed the midfield shape because he didn't like Kai Havertz playing in there. And to a point, I agree with that. But I also think he looked at Declan Rice and thought, this is not giving me the ball progression from deep. And if I don't have Zinchenko in the team, then I'm desperate for ball progression from deep. And I need it from someone else. And that's why he brought Jorginho in. Do you remember when our fortunes turned around last season? And I'm not saying we had a bad first half, but we weren't as good as we could have been. And then he brought Jorginho in and he said to him, you sit there, you get on the ball, you move it forward, you make things happen. And Declan Rice is going to move into a slightly more advanced position. But you know what? He's going to be on hand to drop in next to you and help you physically, because we know that's where Jorginho lacks. And that was the start of Arsenal getting going again. That was the start of Arsenal's push in the second half of the season, which was incredible. 16 wins from 18 with a draw at Manchester City and the one defeat against Aston Villa, and we still didn't win the league. So I think Declan Rice, for me, in Arteta's mind, is an 8 now. Partey and Jorginho could maybe share that 6 role between them, but you do need other options as well in order to just kind of give us that bit of protection. The other options could be Rice dropping in, and maybe you bring in another 8. I definitely think we need an 8. I think that's the priority. And for me, midfield is the most important area that we address this summer, more than a striker, more than bringing in Calafiori. That is the most important part of the team that we need to work on. Because when Partey, Rice and Odegaard are fit and firing, I don't think there's a better midfield in Europe. I genuinely don't. But can we rely on that week after week after week? You can rely on Odegaard as much as is fair. You can rely on Declan Rice as much as is fair. But on Thomas Partey, you know what's going to happen at some point. So you need to have the cover. You need to have the backup.
Yeah, we do, man. And I want to talk about the players that we're linked with. Mikel Merino and Fabian Ruiz, both being linked heavily with Arsenal in the last couple of days. I suppose I'll ask you from the off about your thoughts of the players, but also, do you see both coming in, Harry, or do you think only one's going to come in, bro?
I thought it would be one, but reading what we've been reading over the last few days, the fact that Emile Smith-Rowe is seemingly on his way, the fact that Fabian Ruiz could be available on loan initially as well, that Mikel Merino probably wouldn't cost too much north of 20 million euros, you start to think that it's possible to do both deals. My only worry is, are they too similar in terms of what they would bring to the team? And so is that what we do, or do we try and split our attentions between maybe a 6 and an 8? I don't know. It's tough. Mikel Merino and Fabian Ruiz are quite similar. If you watch them, you'll find that they're similar. I'd say that Fabian Ruiz is probably the better passer of the two. But I'd say that Mikel Merino is probably a bit more physical, a bit better across the ground in terms of his sort of speed and ability to get around the pitch. Do you know what they remind me of, Dan? They remind me of Granit Xhaka in a lot of ways. Now I
was going to mention this, man. The reason I was because you and I have had, how many years have we been having that debate? Probably 4 or 5 years now. But how Granit Xhaka was toilet, and you were saying he was great. For the last 2 years, he obviously was very good, right? And I actually said, when we signed Rice, I was excited, one, because it was Declan Rice, but I thought with Rice and Xhaka staying, which I wanted him to stay, believe it or not, would have been where we would have been able to take our midfield forward. Because we got rid of Xhaka, who, believe it or not, went on to do very, very well with Bayern Leverkusen. We massively need to replace him now. And I don't know if Merino or Ruiz does that, but Merino looks more of an 8 than Ruiz, if that makes sense to you. I think from what I can see, the little of what I've said of both of them, I mean, Fabian Ruiz looked one of the players of the tournament for me in the Euros. I thought Merino was a lot more forward-thinking in his play than Fabian Ruiz, but definitely had more physical attributes in terms of how imposing he looked. So we need to replace that Xhaka role, man, and I'm hoping that one of those could potentially do it, bro. But go on, please continue.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that Mikel Arteta, let's be honest, he didn't want to lose Granit Xhaka. That was not something that he wanted. It was something that the player wanted, and having kind of convinced him twice already that you need to stay, he couldn't hold on to him any longer. And at the start of last season, we suffered from not having that kind of slightly more physical number 8. We had Kai Havertz in there, but he's not a midfielder. As I say, we needed that natural midfielder. And over the course of the season, Mikel Arteta realised that, made the changes that he did to the midfield shape, and Arsenal were better for it. So I'm not surprised that he's going back into the market with the idea of bringing someone in close to what Granit Xhaka was, because that was the profile of player that we were missing. Now, it doesn't mean that he's going to bring in one of these guys and they're going to start every single game and every single week, but that is a weapon that is missing from our armory at the moment, that type of midfield player. I think I'd be happy with either of them coming in. The thing is, with Fabian Ruiz, during his time at Napoli, he was brilliant, fantastic.
Yeah.
But I remember saying to someone at the time when we were talking about it, that My only thing with this is that if you're one of those people that really doesn't like Granit Xhaka because you say that he's too clunky or he doesn't get around the pitch well enough, then you're going to get the same with Fabian Ruiz. So he's not your guy. If you want a Granit Xhaka replacement, Fabian Ruiz can be that. But if you, and I'm talking about Granit Xhaka the 8, not Granit Xhaka the 6. If
Yeah.
you want that, Fabian Ruiz can be that. And I think Mikel Merino can be that as well. But a lot of the weaknesses that people used to point to with Granit Xhaka, I think these two guys have got them as well. So you have to be accepting of what it is that you're signing here. Fabian Ruiz has gone to PSG and he's not been very good. That's the truth of it. People were surprised to see how well he played at the Euros because his form at Paris Saint-Germain has been nowhere near it. That's why he's potentially available on loan. That's why he's potentially available with an obligation to buy later down the line. I don't even think the fee would be particularly big. Mikel Merino, slightly different, probably available for around about 20 million euros. His stock has been rising rather than dipping like Fabian Ruiz's has overall. Ruiz's has gone down, but there's been that upward curve because of the Euros. Whereas Mikel Merino, as he's got older, has got better and people have sort of been more and more impressed by him. Had a spell in the Premier League before, though. Didn't work out well. Didn't really work out for him at Dortmund either. Landed at Real Sociedad and done really, really well. Sometimes environments just fit. And I think, Mikel Arteta is going to have to figure out if any of those guys are the answer in our midfield. I don't think they're the only players that we're looking at, by the way. But they're the two that we're hearing plenty about. But we'll see. I'd be happy with either of them coming in. I'll tell you why, mainly because none of them represent a mega investment. So it's not the type of thing that you can't rectify if you get it wrong at a future point. But it's definitely a profile we're missing. I mean, what do you make of them? Would you be happy to see either of them come in?
I'll be happy with both of them, if I'm honest with you. I know that might sound mad because when I started the window, I wanted a Bruno, Guimaraes, Frankie de Jong. It doesn't mean I don't want them now. Joshua Kimmich. I thought one of those names had to come in, Harry, to be that 6, to allow Rice to be the 8. I don't know if Ruiz and Merino are going to be the 6 or the 8 because I look at Declan Rice and I think if these two are coming in, Rice actually might stay in the 6 more than go to the 8 because the other two sound more like 8s than 6s, but I might be wrong there. I haven't seen enough of them. But for me, I still feel like we need somebody in there that allows that midfield to go, wow, and Partey, Rice and Odegaard do that. But imagine if De Jong, Rice and Odegaard were the 3, and then everyone's looking at Arsenal going, yeah, they've got the best hands down, and they've still got Partey and Jorginho on the bench, and potentially Merino if he comes in. So that's the kind of midfield that I wanted in the summer. But for me, I think both of them would be good. Something in the back of my mind tells me that we won't get both. Something tells me that we'll potentially get one of them, and it depends then what Arteta wants to do, who he wants the most, who wants to come the most. And you're right about Ruiz, by the way, because PSG wanted to sell him before the Euros even kicked a ball because he wasn't very good, apparently. So I think now that he has been able to go alongside Rodri in a midfield that's better, that kind of tempts me a little bit more because if he is surrounded by Odegaard and Rice, we might get the Fabian Ruiz from Napoli. And also, how many players have gone to PSG and done this? Do you know what I mean?
It's not a reflection. Yeah, it's not a reflection of whether you're a good player or not. Like, obviously, it plays some part in the opinion of you and your value, but it's not the be all and end all. We've seen, I mean, how many people laughed at the signing that we made in Jorginho? And how good has he been? Like, overall, there've been a couple of moments, but generally speaking, he's been a really good servant and he's been someone that's come in and given us something different at times when we need it. And everyone talks about how good it is that we've built this young group. And that's absolutely right. But without the Jorginhos, without the Trossards, the signings that at the time, maybe some people would have argued were a little bit underwhelming, you don't have that experience, do you? And you don't have that know-how. And in these guys, you've got that. I don't think we'll get Merino and Ruiz either. I think it's possible that we could because of the money involved, as I've explained. But I think you'd be signing two very similar players, and I don't really think that's the way to go. Arteta's big on versatility. He's big on different options. And I think you should probably look at a different type of midfielder if you're going to bring two in rather than signing Ruiz and Merino, who in my book are not exactly the same because no two players are identical, but they're pretty similar.
No, I hear that. I do hear that. Let's bring some Romano tweets that's literally just broken now around the Calafiori deal. Obviously, we are aware that he's on his way, and he is confirmed to be on his way. As you can see there, Calafiori, 7 minutes ago, Romano's tweeted this out. He's on his way to London with his agents, all set for the medical test with Arsenal. So I expect to get well, we've already got a here we go on this one, but you get my point. This is going to happen now, people. It's always good. You always kind of feel like you need to see him in the shirt, though, Harry, don't you? Before
Yeah,
you get too excited, man.
What I can tell you though from that picture is he's already the coolest guy in the Premier League, and he hasn't even landed yet.
Mate, it's unreal, isn't it? Like I think there was a tweet yesterday I saw saying maybe we'll get more female Arsenal supporters now.
Absolutely, man. The hair, the tattoos. He's a cool lad. He really is. He doesn't struggle on a night out, does he?
Listen, mate, 100%, man, 100%. Look, I feel like the scenario in midfield is an interesting one. And I wanted to ask you your opinions on if you think we're going to get that one big name in midfield, because obviously we've spoken about Ruiz and Merino, as both of us said, yep, fair play. I actually looked potentially at somebody like a Kefren Turam or a Yusuf Fofana in the same mould before a ball was kicked, or before the transfer went open, should I say, because I felt like there was a proper 8 there that could kind of do a little bit of both box to box. I felt like a box to box midfielder was needed because kind of Rice is the only one that we've got there. With the outgoings of Smith-Rowe, which we'll touch on quickly in a minute, do you think like a big name is just not going to happen? Like, it's mainly because, one, I don't see that's available, Harry. I mean, Joshua Kimmich is probably the only one that you would say has realistic opportunity of coming to Arsenal. I don't think De Jong's going to happen. Certainly not going to get somebody like a Barella, for example. And it doesn't look like Bruno Gomes is for sale even now from Newcastle. So are we going to have to just accept that maybe the market doesn't allow us to go and get that proper big name midfielder?
I think Arsenal have shown over the last few years, Dan, that if they think it's the right player, they'll spend on it.
Okay.
Like if they think you're the right guy, i.e. Declan Rice, they'll do it. They'll pull the trigger. I think if they could have got Benjamin Sesko, for example, they would have done it. But because that was a player that they believed was the answer. But I don't think we're in a place where we're desperate anymore. We've made big strides forwards, and I think we know now that we're in a good place. And if we can make the right additions, that could be the difference. But we're not going to do business for the sake of it. We're not in that stage anymore where we need to panic and we're desperately trying to overhaul the squad. I look at some of the players that we've got, and I feel like it's as if people dismiss the idea of them getting better. Like Saka's getting better and better. You know, Odegaard is getting better and better. Like Saliba and Gabriel as a pairing is getting better and better. And it's like, that's a big part of it as well. Like, it's not just about what you bring in from external sources. It's what you have internally as well. Can you make it better? Can you tweak it? Can you improve there? So I don't think we're going to go out. As I said earlier, I don't think we're going to go and spend mega money on one player. I think there'll probably be 2 more after the Calafiori, if I was predicting and guessing in terms of who comes in. But they don't have to cost an arm and a leg to be a worthwhile addition. And that's the kind of mindset that we need to get out of, I think. Look at the business that Real Madrid do. I know that they have that capability. And I know, you know, for example, they've paid Kylian Mbappe a ton of money as a signing on fee. But they're a club exactly in the power position where they're not desperate. They were able to wait for him to run down his contract and do that bit of business. They looked at Lenny Yoro, who Manchester United have ended up with, and they thought, good player, quite like him, but we're not going to be held to ransom and pay a stupid amount of money like Manchester United have, because we don't need it. We're not desperate. And that's where we are nowadays as well. We're not at Real Madrid's level, of course. We're not winning what they're winning. But in the sense of we've got our core squad, and the heavy lifting that needed to be done to turn it all around has already been done. Now it's about additions and it's about tweaks and it's about replacing. And the reason I've got confidence we will bring in 2 more players is because the Smith-Rowe money's coming in. I think we're probably going to get some money for Nketiah maybe 12 months down the line. Probably going to sell Reece Nelson as well. And the emergence of Ethan Nwaneri is a big talking point in midfield as well, because I really do believe that Mikel Arteta sees him as someone who can come in and bring that creativity in the future. I think Mikel Arteta still believes in Fabio Vieira as well. I know not all Arsenal fans do, but I think Mikel Arteta does. And so I think he'll think that we're well stocked there.
See, I like a lot of what you've said there, but there's a lot that I don't like.
You don't like the Fabio Vieira point, do you?
Well, I don't. And maybe I'm harsh, Harry, right? Maybe it is. You know me, I'll say it how it is. I've seen enough evidence to suggest this player might not be suited to the Premier League. He looks incredibly weak and incredibly lightweight. And there's a difference between both of those, by the way, because you can be lightweight and a very good player. But if you're lightweight and strong, you'll get by. If you're lightweight and weak, you won't. And I just look at him and I think I'm all for people getting pushed off the ball, right? Because that's what happens in football. You come up against Rodri, again Vieira or a Santi Cazorla and a Patrick Vieira, who's going to win, right? It don't take Einstein to work out. But at the same time, if you come in and give your all and give 110% and go, do you know what? I need to get stronger. I need to look at it. I just don't think he's going to get any better physically. And I look at him and as a player and I think, yeah, you've got a wand of a left foot, great way to pass. I like your passing ability with your left foot, but that's it. And I was speaking to Deluded yesterday. The glimpses of Fabio Vieira have never come from the right-hand side, the middle of the park, or the left eight. It's come from the left wing. He set up Odegaard against Wolves. He set up Martinelli against Villa away. He set up the goal for Eddie Nketiah against Fulham.
Yeah,
I've seen some really good things from Fabio Vieira from the left. Do we need another left winger? I mean, we look like we're going to go and buy another one. So I don't know, man. I don't see a future for him there. However, I do agree with you on Nwaneri. And he was by far one of the positives the other day against Bournemouth. He looked incredible. And I think for his age and the confidence levels of the kid, I do see him potentially coming into the mould this season. Now, my question to you there about Smith-Rowe, we might as well come into it now, is what happens now? Because for me, I'd love to go and get Eze to replace Smith-Rowe. I don't know if that's realistic, by the way, but that's what I would like to see happen. Does Arteta want that, or does he want to stick with Vieira and Nwaneri and just let Smith-Rowe go and Nwaneri become that Smith-Rowe replacement? So there's a few questions there, Harry, because I mean Smith-Rowe is kind of left a sour taste in some people's mouths because they love the kid, and I get that. But I wanted to get your opinions on that sale and what we might need to do in that area, because I just don't think Fabio Vieira and Nwaneri are going to be guaranteeing us to get across the line for a title that we so badly want, mate.
I don't think we desperately need to replace Emile Smith-Rowe, because if you look at how much impact he had last season, it was 0.
Yeah.
And the season before that. That's why we've opted to move him on. That's why he's opted to leave. As much as people love him, and I was one of the people that really jumped on the Emile Smith-Rowe hype train when he first broke through, he's not been a part of this team really for probably 2-3 seasons now. So the fact that you can get 30 odd million quid for someone that has played 0 part, has got the injury history that he has, that's incredible business, in my opinion. It's too good to turn down. You got to take it. It's good for us. It's good for him as well, because he needs to go and start fresh, in my opinion. On the kind of Nwaneri thing, I think that we've got to be careful with him because he's so young. But obviously, he's going to get that move into the first team squad, and he's probably going to play a part in cup competitions. He's probably going to get minutes in games where we're comfortable, etc., etc., and that's absolutely fine. With Vieira, I completely understand why people look at him and say he hasn't done enough yet, and I'm the first one to say that he looks lightweight, and I'm worried about that. But I do think if you go back to last season, there was a time in the first half of the campaign where Fabio Vieira was starting to impact games. He was starting to come off the bench and he was starting to have an impact in football matches. And then he got that red card, which saw him face a suspension. And then he picked up an injury that saw him miss, I think, November all the way through to February. And at that point,
against Forest and Fulham, and he contributed straight away. I think it's the first 2 home games where he literally came on. I think he set up Eddie Nketiah twice, actually, as it goes from that area of the pitch. So you're right in terms of his contribution, mate. Yeah, no, 100%. And
I'm not saying he ever got there, but he's
no. I get what you're saying, and I get. But my question would be though, Harry, why did he not have more confidence in playing him when he was fit? Then I just don't get this from Arteta.
It's difficult to say. It's difficult to say. Like, again, I'm not completely in on Fabio Vieira. Like, I don't believe that he's the solution or the answer, but I just look at what we invested in him. I look at the way Arteta talks about him. I look at the way that, he's still involved, and I do think he's going to get one more season to prove himself. And in Arteta's eyes, at least, and I'm not even saying this is correct, but in Arteta's eyes, it feels like he's been ahead of Emile Smith-Rowe for quite some time. So, I look at that and I think, well, then surely he's going to be a part of the makeup of the squad. Does he see him as the guy that plays if Odegaard isn't available? Now, Odegaard isn't going to not play when he's available because he's so important. He's a team captain, etc. But does he look at him, left-footed player, quite creative, capable of a shot from the edge of the box? Does he see him as that guy, the guy that you plug in to replace Odegaard in the event that he's unavailable? I don't know. I'm going to give him one more season, and we'll see where we're at on that. But do we go out and replace Emile Smith-Rowe? I think we need to do some work in midfield. I don't necessarily think we need to directly replace Emile Smith-Rowe, but if we can use those funds to do some business in that area of the park, at least, I think that'd be wise.
Emile Smith-Rowe, quickly, good money, Harry.
Oh, fantastic money, in my opinion. I don't think you can expect more than that for someone who's played as little football and has had as little impact as him. And I've heard some people say that 30 odd million is not enough. And I just think, what planet are you living on? We started off the show by talking about why teams aren't spending mega money. And then people are moaning that, 30 million isn't enough. I think if someone had offered 25, I'd have taken it. I really would have.
Mad, right? Someone actually did offer that. Was it Villa? And
Yeah.
this was when he was at his best. I say his best. We don't know his best yet, but you get what I'm saying. Best in an Arsenal shirt for sure. And we rejected that. To then go 12 to 18 months without really playing football and to get 35 million for him, I can see why we've accepted this. And I've got no doubt that Mikel Arteta probably didn't actually want to sell Smith-Rowe. He's not, and in terms of like put him on the transfer market and stuff and transfer list the player. But I do believe that as soon as that money come in, they're like, look, we just can't say no to that. And do you know what? Smith-Rowe, as much as he loves Arsenal, probably thought, yeah, maybe this is a good opportunity for me to go and play first team football. And I hope, 100%. And I mean this, Harry, I hope he has a great career because I love the kid. I think he's a really great kid. I think he's got a great potential to do very well. And maybe we'll look back one day and think, blimey, maybe it could have happened for us. But at the moment, we don't know that. And we've done this before with many players where it hasn't worked out for them. So we have to take that money, man. Another two players that look like they're on the move are another two Highlanders, Eddie Nketiah and Reece Nelson. There's reports today suggesting that Marseille are interested in a loan with an obligation. Arsenal are trying to push that to around about £40 million. Where do you see this one going, bruv?
I think it will happen. I think that Eddie Nketiah is keen on this. It seems like he's happy with the personal terms that are on offer. Marseille's a great landing spot for someone like Eddie Nketiah. They are a huge football club. And, of all the loan spells that William Saliba had, that was the club that made him a man, in my opinion. Because he was playing in front of a huge crowd under huge pressure, because no matter how bad or good Marseille are, their fans expect so much. And so I think Eddie Nketiah is used to that. He's used to having every move scrutinized, every shot scrutinized by being an Arsenal player and people telling him he's not good enough and all the rest of it, and finding a way to kind of come through that. I think if he goes there, I think he'll be a real hit. I really, really do. I think that the style of football they're going to play under Roberto De Zerbi will suit him. I think that, having others there that have experienced Premier League football is going to help him in terms of making that transition. I don't think you're going to get 40 million for him. Not a chance. Like, I think if you got 30 million euros, you should probably take that. I think that's about right for Eddie Nketiah. It's probably going to be paid later down the line. But yeah, I mean, Netweed says in the comment section, if they're huge, which they are, why would they want the worst striker in the world? He's not the worst striker in the world. That's complete and utter nonsense. That is complete and utter nonsense. Like, he is not. He's a good striker that hasn't had the opportunity to play a run of games and get himself into the rhythm at a team that is built around him. You think about when he did get some games, he's asked to do what Gabriel Jesus was doing, which is completely out of his comfort zone. He is a box striker, Eddie Nketiah. He's not a drop off, get on the ball, dribble, take people on, make things happen kind of guy. That's not his game. I think that you've got to remember that the disparity between the Premier League and everywhere else right now financially is huge. And so when you're selling to those places, you've got to accept that you're going to get a lower fee. You sell Premier League to Premier League, push your luck, do what you can. But when you're selling abroad, you have to accept that the honey pot, if you like, is smaller. And that's just the way it is.
Listen, I think this one will happen as well. 30 million plus add-ons is what I think we should trying to push towards. Reece Nelson, likewise, loan obligation to Leicester, trying to push for £20 million. I kind of feel like they're in the same boat with this one, Harry, if I'm honest. I like what Reece Nelson's done. He's had glimpses, but he's never really held down the first team place. I don't think we'll miss him if he goes. And if I'm honest with you, bruv, we were talking about touching 90 to 100 million here for 3 players that are Highlanders that are going to be 100% profit. So do you think this is, again, a bit of good business from Arsenal to let him go?
Yeah, I think the thing is, it's good for everyone. And you're doing the right bit of business when it works for everyone. So if it works for the player, then it means that it's probably time they move on. If it works for the club, then there's no reason not to do it. It's just one of those things. Like, they're all good players that we all have that affiliation with them because they're Highlanders, and we all want them to do well, of course. But football's a ruthless game, and it's very rare nowadays that you can have a team made up largely of academy products. You're going to have one or two that come through, and we've got that with Bukayo Saka. He's become the talisman of this team, and it's great, but they're not all going to make it like that. That doesn't mean they can't go on and have good careers elsewhere, and you've got to allow them to do that as well. I think you owe that. So, you owe that to them. So let them go.
Yeah, fair play, man. Everyone in the chat is dying to ask about the striker, so we're going to do that lastly to close the show. Before we do that, we've got over 500 people in here chat, so big up to all of you, but we've only got 144 likes, so please make sure that we hit the like button. Please make sure we subscribe to the channel, and make sure you go follow Harry over at the Chronicles of a Gooner, which has now changed your branding and logo, which looks quality, by the way, mate. So
Thanks,
do they type Chronicles still, or is it DCO? Now.
Yeah, they can just type the Chronicles of a Gooner. Yeah, I just abbreviated it for the hashtag for the handles on social media.
Yeah, of course, man. That's way too long. No, that's cool, man. Listen, we might as well get into it. Let me ask you the question everyone's been asking me of late, right?
Go on then.
Do Arsenal buy a striker this season, or do they go all out for Alexander Isak next summer? Now, the reason that is a bit risky is because, well, one, might not buy anyone, and two, he might not be available next summer, right? So it's a really tricky question to answer. Now, we might get Ivan Toney in now, or a Victor Gyökeres in now, or Osimhen, or throw other names at me if you want. Or do we just say scoring goals wasn't our problem? 91 goals scored, 29 goals, I think it was, conceded. Let's add the midfield and the wide player, which we'll come on to in a minute. Where are you at with this one, Harry? Do you think Arsenal are going to get a striker? Do you think Arsenal need a striker, and do you think we're going to get one? I suppose is what I'm asking.
I think look, you always strive for perfection when you're building a squad. So yes, we do need one. We do need that cold-blooded killer in front of goal.
I'm with you. I agree.
However, is it the priority? My answer to that will be no. So when we went into the summer, I had three positions in mind. Number one, the midfield. That needs to be sorted.
Mm-hmm.
Second was left back for me. And third was a striker or a forward in some capacity. If Arsenal find a winger that they think can add 15 goals to us a season, do that. If you think it's the right player, I'm fine with that. I'm not obsessed with it being an out-and-out 9. I'm not obsessed with that idea. But if you can't find the right number 9, then should you go and fork out a ton of money? Like, let's put it this way, right? I think we can all agree that Alexander Isak is better than Victor Gyökeres, right?
Mm-hmm.
You'd rather have him than Victor Gyökeres.
Absolutely.
Gyökeres
He's my number one anyway. Isak's my number
for
one.
Sure, same. Gyökeres' release clause is 100 million euros. That's a lot of money. And listen, they might deal at less than that, but it's a hell of a lot of money to throw at someone that isn't your number one choice. And it goes back to the point I made earlier. Declan Rice was the number one choice. So you didn't mind pushing the boat out and spending way more than you'd normally be comfortable with to get him in, because there was no doubt that he would impact and make your team better. When I think about the strikers that we're being linked with, Gyökeres, even Sesko, who was being talked about before, I know that's not going to happen now. Did you, and I'll ask you this, I'll throw it back at you, did you at any point get massively excited about any of those potential deals? Because I look at all of those names and I'm like, I'd quite like to have them, but it isn't the be-all and end-all for me. And I'm the same now with Victor Osimhen as well. Get him in, great. I'm sure he'll do okay. But am I like looking at it like I was the Declan Rice signing and going, oh my God, we got to do whatever it takes to get this over the line? The answer is no.
The only one we would do that with is Isak. I'm with you there. I like Gyökeres, I must say. I do. What I see, hear, read about, watch. Like the fact he's had time in England and killed it. Like the fact he's gone over to Portugal and killed it. Everybody throws Darwin Nunez's name back at me, but let's be real. Like, it doesn't mean he's going to be a flop when he comes over to us. But I'm with you, Harry, that I don't want to go. Like, the Sesko one was bizarre to me. I still don't get it now. I looked at it. I didn't think, wow. I would have probably taken him over Osimhen for the pure fact that they wanted him. But that is only the reason why. Like, if we don't want a player, I don't really want him. Do you know what I mean? Like, if Arteta doesn't really fancy him, we've seen what he's like with players he doesn't fancy. So I can scream Ivan Toney as loud as I want, or Osimhen as loud as I want if you really wanted him. But Mikel Arteta doesn't. With Gyökeres, I kind of see that he would fit the bill. I do. And I think that would be a good signing. But he's still not my number one. Isak's my number one. So
Yeah.
I'm kind of with you. That's why I found it hard to really answer that question. Like, what do you do? Do you wait for Isak? Well, is he going to be available? Is the answer to that? Gyökeres, do you go and get? Have we done enough waiting? Do you know what I mean? Do we not just go and try and get someone now to try and get us across the line? It's a really difficult one, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. Like, I'm just very much of the opinion that if you're not the one, then there's a limit as to how far I'll go on you. And then it becomes down to the market rather than the club. So if Sporting are only willing to do a deal for Gyökeres at his release clause, then I'm not paying that. Sorry, if it's me, I'm not paying that. I think he's a good player, but 100 million euros is mad excessive. Because the only evidence we have that he could do it in England was in the Championship, right? So I'm not meaning to be disrespectful, but that's the reality. And then he's gone to a league that is significantly weaker than the Premier League, and he's done it there, great. But there's still an element of risk to that. Benjamin Sesko, I wasn't against that one because we were talking about like 60 million euros, which is nearly half of what you would maybe have to pay for Gyökeres. So I was more open to that, less of a risk. Victor Osimhen, Napoli put a price tag on him of over 100 million. Not for me, not worth that. And then Ivan Toney, if you're talking 60 million pounds for him, you know, he's had the ban for what he did. And, you know, I've heard whispers that, you know, all is not well with Ivan Toney in terms of how that all unfolded and went down. I don't know that for a fact. But, you know, you know me, Dan, we've had a conversation before. I've never been big on Ivan Toney anyway.
No, I know you haven't. No,
So,
I like him, but I know you don't, you know.
So then for that to all have happened, and not so much of that, right? The gambling thing, that's up to him, right? What he does behind closed doors. It's more the fact that he missed 6 months of football for me. And then he returned after 6 months and didn't really do that well, in my opinion. His second half of last season wasn't great. It wasn't like he didn't come back with a bang. And I know it's easier said than done when you've been out for 6 months, but he didn't come back in the kind of form that made me go, shit, we better go for this guy. Like, I think that Brentford are going to be in a position come the end of the window where maybe there's an opportunity for someone to take it because of his contract situation, and they might have to considerably drop their valuation of him. And then maybe it's an opportunistic signing. But right now, I'm not massively enthused by any of the names that have been discussed. Therefore, if we don't get one, I'm not going to sit there and point fingers at the club and say, you messed up, because I don't really know what the obvious choice is.
Okay, listen, I like that answer. I think what you've said there, you backed up your opinions as to why. I think that there is an opportunity to go and get a Toney or a Gyökeres. If they don't feel that's the guy they want, then fair play. That's not the guy they want. But I think a striker would potentially help. And the reason I say that, Harry, right, just lastly, is because I feel personally there was a few games last season where a killer in the box would have won us the game. I love Trossard. He's one of the best finishers at the club, in my opinion. But you've got to score against Martinez at Villa at home. You can't miss that chance.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that if you can't try to upgrade on that, then you know you've got to at least try. And Havertz as well has been in that position this season. And I think there was games where we lost where we never should have lost with a killer up front. We should have been 2 or 3-0 up in 25 minutes. Liverpool at home in the FA Cup. West Ham, where we lost in the end at the Emirates. We were all over both those teams. And we didn't have that killer striker. And everyone was going in January, we need a striker, I need a striker. If you remember, it was like topical news. So I think if we was to go another summer without one, people would start to go, wow, 5 years, one striker bought in Jesus. Like,
all right, let me ask you this.
I really don't want it.
Let me ask you this. Do you think, because I certainly think this is the case, do you think that because he had an injury-ravaged season last season, people have forgotten the impact that Gabriel Jesus can have? And do you not think that if Gabriel Jesus can rediscover the form he did in the first half of his Arsenal career so far, so the first season, when he came in and turned our fortunes around as an attack, not necessarily by scoring a ton of goals, but by the creativity that he brought, do you not think that with him, and if we fix the midfield and use him and Havertz as the two centre-forward options, with the contributions of Saka, Trossard, Martinelli, Odegaard, that will do you not think that we could be okay in that department?
I think we could be okay if Martinelli shows the form of the season before the one just gone. And if Gabriel Jesus continues with the form that we've seen at the start of his Arsenal career. Having said that, we don't know that Martinelli will guarantee that. And we also look at Gabriel Jesus as having his best year at 14 goals for Manchester City. Now, I'm not saying that's bad. And I'm not saying that we won't win the league with that. But I feel like the number 9. I feel like we're comparing ourselves to Manchester City, which is something that people will say you shouldn't do, but we kind of have to because that's what we will need to be beating. And they've got one that gets 25 goals this season, and they've got contributors in Foden, Kevin De Bruyne, Bernardo Silva. The list goes on. I feel like we've got the contributors and we've got goals by committee, but we don't have that 25 goal a season striker. And some people might not want that because they might say it takes away everything as a main focal point. Is not what you want. I kind of disagree because I don't know that Haaland is just the main focal point because he's not the one who scores all their goals and everyone's like, wish we could score. Like they score as well, right? So I feel like adding something like that is what we need. Now, I go back to the point and I agree with you that Isak's the only one that I look at and get excited by. He would be the signing that I'd go, I think we're ready to win the league. Oh my God, this is going to be incredible. I don't know that I do that with Gyökeres, Osimhen and the others, but I think Gyökeres could be one that's probably my next favourite for that. But I do think that keeping Jesus and Havertz, it could be another risk as well. Now, Havertz, we might be a bit harsh when I say this, but I'm still not convinced he's clinical enough. I do think 13, 14 goals from most of it playing from the 8 was a very good first season. I will say that. And I think in the 9, he definitely allows for it to be a good option for us. But I just feel like that centre forward, Harry, would be wow. And I think the rival fans, and I know it shouldn't matter about what the rivals fan thinks, but it kind of does a bit. I think rival fans, we get that centre forward in at Osimhen, Gyökeres, or Tony. I think they will look at it and go, bloody hell, that's not what we needed. I wish they would have kept Havertz and Jesus. And because they're feeling like that, I don't want to keep Havertz and just Jesus. And I don't know, maybe you think that's harsh. But if we get rid of Eddie, surely someone's got to come in, right?
Yeah, but to me, it could be any form of attacker. Like it doesn't need to necessarily be a centre forward.
Okay.
Like you could bring in another winger that you think could contribute 10 goals coming in and out of the side. And that could still bridge the gap between where we are and where we want to be. So there's different ways of doing things. I also think I quite like the idea of us having goals all around the team because I feel like it gives us an unpredictability. I think there are very few centre forwards out there now in the market that I look at and think, regardless of how teams set up against you, he's going to get 25, 30 goals. There's a handful of them. Haaland is one of them, yes, and City have him. But Gyökeres ain't on that level. Osimhen ain't on that level. Tony isn't on that level. And that's kind of why I'm a little bit reticent to say, let's go and spend a ton of money on any of those players. If there was a centre forward out there that I thought was the guy, if Alexander Isak was available for 150 million and we had the means to do that, I would be sitting here saying, go and do that. Because I'm certain that improves us. But I'm not certain that bringing in one of the names that we've been talking about improves us enough to justify the amount of money that we're going to have to pay to get them. Because I do think with a more selfish centre forward, you don't get the same goals from Saka. You don't get the same goals from Trossard/Martinelli on that left-hand side because they're rarely going to play at the same time. You don't get the same from Odegaard. Even Declan Rice got, 7 or 8 goals last season, which was by far his best goal-scoring campaign. You know, you think about what we can offer from set pieces with the centre halves we have and now fullbacks who are giants too and all the rest of it. Like, I just think it's nice that we share it around. And I think we can make the difference by bringing in an attacker of some sort. It doesn't have to be the number 9, if you like.
Well, let's end on that because Nico Williams is the guy everybody wants. I think he's going Barcelona, Harry. I have to be honest with you. Apparently, there's some movement on that today, and that Barcelona said they can afford him now. And funny enough, Laporte's come out and said we're all right financially. I mean, I don't know how they are, that club.
He
that
sold
club
the car park or something.
Oh, mate, honestly, that club, they do my head in, man, Barcelona. They're always skint, but they seem to keep able to buy. I think he's going to go there, bruv. What's your thoughts on a wide player? Links with Eze, Pedro Neto, ballers, love both of them. Obviously, Nico Williams has been mentioned, and some other options that people have discussed as well, man. Do you think we're going to get a wide man?
I think we'll bring in a attacker, and it depends on what we can get our hands on in terms of whether it's a winger or a centre forward. That's why I don't think Arsenal are obsessed with it being one or the other. I think they're looking at options, and if they think one is a good fit, they'll do it, whether it's a wide man or a centre forward. I think Eze is someone I'd like, but I worry that because of what Crystal Palace managed to sell Michael Olise for, and the fact there's quite a lot of excitement around that project under Oli Glasner, that they're going to push the price up mad on him. So that's going to be difficult. I like Neto. Worry about his injuries a little bit, but I know that we're in the process of signing Calafiori, who's also got a patchy injury record. So, that's not necessarily the only reason to stay away from a signing. Nico Williams, going into the Euros, I wasn't sure about him. I've got to be honest. I was kind of on the fence about whether he has the end product. He always seemed to provide loads of assists at Bilbao, but in terms of goal scoring, it wasn't like anything inspiring. But I watched him live, I think 2 or 3 times at the Euros, and I thought he was fantastic. And I'm all in on that now, but it feels like we've missed the boat on that, and he's going to Barcelona as well. So, we'll see.
Yeah, we will see, man. I want to lastly come in with a couple of these comments because Amjid is definitely playing FIFA, bless him. And I'm for it. I love it, and I wish we did have the money to do this. But he's saying we should act like a big club and go and buy Isak and Williams. I thought get Champions League meant buying world-class players, and he's also thrown in Kvaratskhelia into the mix as well. I mean, look, I'd love that. Harry, I'm sure you would as well, but I think we need to be realistic. I mean, Kvaratskhelia is going to cost about 90 million. Williams is fair enough because he's got a release clause, but Isak's going to cost over 100. Do we have 220 million to spend on these players?
No, we don't. We got to be realistic, but I'd love Kvaratskhelia. I think he's fantastic. And he didn't have as good a season last year in Serie A as he did the year before when Napoli won the Scudetto. But I thought he showed everyone again at the Euros. Like,
I thought he lit up the Euros, man.
Yeah,
I was so impressed with Georgia. They were my team at the tournament, man. They surprise packaged me, and I was well happy with them. But
it's funny because they knocked out Greece in the qualifying playoff, right? And so going into the tournament, I was like, I hope they fail out of pure bitterness. But then I watched the first game against Turkey, and I was like, wow, like how can you not want them to do well? And all of a sudden, I started to get on board with them. So yeah, they were brilliant.
Love that, man. Love that. Listen, you're a ledge for coming on, man. I do appreciate this. Hour's flown by with you. Shout out what you've got coming up, mate, and how people can follow you, bruv.
Thanks for having me, man. You can follow me on X at Harry Simiu and on the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast, which is a daily Arsenal pod. Although today we're not doing anything because I'm going to do a late one, watch the game tonight. And then we'll be back with you Sunday morning, reflecting on Arsenal versus Manchester United and however that goes. And we'll do all the talking points from that. You can find that on YouTube or whatever podcast store it is that you get your shows from. And cheers for having me, man. It's been a while. It's been a great chat, and all the best, man.
No, you too, my bro. Thank you so much for coming on, mate. It's always a pleasure talking football with you. Make sure you go support Harry at Chronicles of a Gooner. You'll see him on TalkSport all the time as well. So make sure you tune into all of his stuff that he does there. Make sure you do me a favor. There's still nearly 600 of you in here. Please do me a favor. How many likes are we on now? Must be on over 200. Let's get that up to 300 people. We just hit 200, just over. Let's get that to 300. Hit the like and subscribe. Make sure you head over to the Chronicles of a Gooner. Make sure you check out Manscaped as well. Really important that you do that and support the sponsors. And we'll see you next time, people. Take it easy. We're out of it.
Yes, people, Manscaped is back. But this time, it's not for below the belt grooming. Manscaped brings to you the Beard Hedger, the best product on the market when it comes to beard trimmers. The Beard Hedger is unique due to its number of gradient settings. As someone who's purchased this, I won't turn to any other beard trimmer. Check it out for yourself at manscaped.com. And don't forget to use code FTM20 to get 20% off of this product.